Imagine placing your hand on a table. You feel the hardness, the texture, the pressure. But have you actually touched it? The truth is, you've never touched anything in your life. And this isn't philosophy. It's physics. Chapter 1. Touch the Great Illusion. Let's start with something familiar. You wake up, you stretch out your hand. Maybe you touch the floor, the bed sheet, the cold surface of your phone. Every day, from the moment we open our eyes to the time we drift off to sleep, we touch things. Absurd. Maybe even a little pretentious. You feel it under your skin solid, unmoving, cold or warm. It resists your weight. You push against it, and it pushes back. Everything in your body tells you, yes, I'm touching the table. But stay with me. Molecules, meeting molecules. Atoms hitting atoms. We tap, hold, grab, hug, squeeze, and press. It's one of the most basic ways we interact with the world. It feels so real, so undeniable. But what if I told you, you've never truly touched anything in your life, and once you understand it, the way you experience the world might never be the same? I know how that sounds. This isn't some abstract philosophy or poetic metaphor. It's physics. Let's take something simple. Imagine placing your palm flat on a table. So when your hand meets a table, it should be atom-on-atom contact. But physics says something very different is happening. Something stranger than you might expect. But what you're actually feeling is the electromagnetic resistance between the atoms in your hand and the atoms in the table. That's it. To understand it, we need to take a step back and ask a basic question. What does it mean to touch something? Is it just contact between surfaces? They push back. No matter how close you get, there's a tiny, invisible gap between them. Or, just like the same poles of two magnets push away from each other, electrons resist other electrons coming too close. It's called electrostatic repulsion. At the center, you have a tiny nucleus made of protons and neutrons. Surrounding it is a cloud of electrons, tiny particles with negative electric charge. That sounds reasonable, right? After all, objects are made of atoms. You're made of atoms. That resistance sends signals to your brain. Something is there. But here's the twist. Atoms never really touch. Not sitting on them. Not pressing into them. Just hovering, like a phantom with perfect timing. It constructs the experience of contact. But the reality, if you see something, you might doubt it. If you hear something, maybe you miss. It's only fields repelling each other. Force fields. Really. It's always electric fields reacting. Always space. Always distance. We still believe in the warmth of a hug or the pain of a stubbed toe. Let's break this down. Atoms, as you might remember from science class, are mostly empty space. Now here's where things get weird. It translates quantum behavior into something your heart can understand. Electrons repel other electrons. But maybe that's okay. So when your hand approaches a wooden desk, the outermost electrons in the atoms of your skin come close to the electrons in the atoms of the desk. It's just built differently than we thought. But instead of touching, those electrons push each other away. It's not violent or dramatic. It's subtle, gentle, constant, but powerful. You feel the table. You'd even believe you're pressing down on it. There's no physical contact in the way we imagine it. It's like trying to press the like-charged balloons together. And that's exactly what's happening with your body and everything around you. You might be wondering, if we're never actually touching anything, then why does it feel like we are? That's where your brain comes in. Your nervous system is designed to respond to pressure, specifically to the resistance your skin feels when it gets close enough to another surface for the electrons to repel. Your brain interprets those signals as touch. This entire time, you've been held just barely above the surfaces you interact with. It's wild, isn't it? We grow up thinking of touch as one of the most grounded, obvious experiences. We trust it more than sight or sound. But if you touch it, that's real. Right, well, not quite. The truth is, what we call touch is more about how matter refuses to overlap. It's about force and resistance, not contact. And this isn't limited to just your hand and a table. Think about walking. Your feet never really hit the ground. Eating, your teeth never actually bite into food the way you think they do. Even a kiss, romantic, intimate, never includes physical contact in the strictest sense. But somehow, we still feel it. We still connect. That's the beautiful part. Even if it's all repulsion and space and invisible forces, your brain gives it meaning. It turns emptiness into experience. So no, you've never really touched anything, because what we feel is still real. Chapter 2. Enter the atomic world. Let's go deeper. In chapter 1, we talked about how UV never truly touched anything that what UV licensee, actual contact, but repulsion between atoms. It's a strange idea, but to understand it fully, we need to shrink ourselves down, way down. Welcome to the atomic world. You, me, the sky, your phone, this table. But what do we really mean when we say that? Most people know, at least vaguely, that everything around us is made of atoms. That's the old school model. But even if it's not fully accurate by today's standards, it helps us imagine scale. Let's build a picture. How far away do you think the electrons would be? An atom looks simple in textbooks. A small nucleus in the center, and some electrons circling around it, like planets around a sun. So imagine this, the nucleus, the tiny center of the atomus, the size of a grain of rice. That's how much empty space exists inside every single atom. Maybe a few inches. No, not even close. If the nucleus were a grain of rice sitting in the middle of a football stadium, the electrons would be flying around somewhere near the outer stands. Let that sink in. The stuff you think of as solid, the wall behind you, the floor under your feet, it's made almost entirely of nothing. The distance between the nucleus and the electrons is vast compared to their sizes. It's like having a housefly orbiting a basketball from miles away. The electromagnetic force is one of the 4 fundamental forces in nature. The electrons, which we've talked about a lot, are negatively charged and exist in a sort of cloud around the nucleus. It's being pushed back by electromagnetic force from trillions of atoms resisting the atoms in your skin. In modern physics, electrons are better described as existing in probability clouds. But at the atomic scale, it's all about probabilities, not certainties. We can't say, this electron is here. We can only say, it's probably here, maybe. That means we don't know exactly where they are at any given moment. Instead, we have a range of places where they're likely to be. It's what holds electrons in orbit. It's also what prevents 2 atoms from overlapping. All the matter in your body would fit into a space no larger than a speck of dust. Which raises the question, if atoms are mostly empty, why doesn't your hand just fall through everything? Stars, planets, galaxies, they're all made of atoms, which means they're all, mostly, nothing. The answer, once again, comes down to the forces at play. All this emptiness gives structure to your chair, your body, your voice. So when your hand rests on a table, it's not resting at all. And what looks simple might be hiding layers of mystery deeper than we can imagine. At the atomic level, nothing is actually touching. It's all force fields and space. That's something so complex, so rich, so full of meaning can't be built from what seems like almost nothing. That's how little actual stuff there is inside us. Now, let's go a little deeper into how these atoms are built. Each atom's center, the nucleus, is made of protons and neutrons. Protons are positively charged. Neutrons have no charge. Here's something interesting. Electrons don't really orbit the nucleus like planets. That's an outdated idea. It's strange, isn't it? We like to think of the world as solid, certain, unknowable. And yet, all this uncertainty builds the reality we experience. Here is another mind-bender. If you took all the empty space out of every atom in your body, if you somehow compressed the atoms so that the electrons collapsed into the nucleus, you'd be unimaginably small. And if we did that to every human being on Earth, compressed the entire human race down to just the matter with no space, we'd all fit inside a sugar cube, a single cube of sugar. It's not just humans. The universe is a beautiful illusion of structure made from space, force, and probability. So when we say solid object, what we really mean is a collection of mostly empty atoms resisting other mostly empty atoms. We build our world on that illusion. We sit on chairs, walk on floors, hold hands, and write words on paper, believing in the feel of it all. But underneath it, there's almost nothing there. And that's not something to fear. In fact, it's part of what makes existence so incredible. It also shows us that the world isn't always how it appears. What feels solid may be empty. What seems quiet may be vibrating with hidden energy. By stepping into the atomic world, we start to see that reality. ISNT built from touchable blocks, it S built from invisible rules, forces, and interactions that never rest, never stop. And somehow, from all of that, we get tables, trees, laughter, and love. Maybe that's the real magic of physics. It doesn't take the mystery away, it reveals more of it. So next time you place your hand on something and feel its surface pushing back, remember, You're not touching it. You're meeting resistance in a space so small, your atoms can't even sneak through. And yet, you feel it. The illusion is so perfect, it becomes your truth. Chapter 3. The electron shield. An invisible barrier. By now, we've learned that atoms are mostly empty space. We've also seen that what feels like touch is actually a force, an invisible interaction between atoms. But now, let's zoom in even closer. Let's focus on the outer edge of every atom, the part that does the touching. This is where the magic, or the illusion, really begins. At the edge of every atom is a layer of electrons. These are tiny, negatively charged particles. They don't just sit still. They move. They shift. They exist in a sort of cloudy probability space, never locked into one fixed spot. When you bring two atoms close together, say, an atom from your fingertip and one from a glass of water, what happens? The electrons on each atom start to repel each other. Not because they're angry, not because they don't want to meet, but because they're negatively charged. Negative charges repel. This is the invisible shield. This repulsion is what keeps the atoms from overlapping. And when trillions of atoms in your hand approach trillions of atoms in another object, all those electrons push back. But here's the strange part. They never actually touch. No part of your atom makes contact with another. It's like trying to bring two magnets together the wrong way. They resist. They push away. There's a gap you just can't close, no matter how much force you apply. This is the electron shield, a silent barrier that surrounds everything you know. It's always there. You can't see it. You can't feel it directly, but it shapes everything you feel. This shield is what gives objects their shape. It's what makes solid things seem solid. It's what stops your hand from passing through a wall, even though the atoms in both are mostly empty space. You might be wondering, how strong is this force? Stronger than you think. Let's take a simple example. Imagine dropping a ball onto the floor. It bounces. But why? At the atomic level, it never actually hits the floor. The electrons in the ball get close to the electrons in the floor, and the repulsion sends the ball back up. Every bounce, every impact, every step you take, none of it involves actual contact. It's all force fields, repelling like a quiet war of distance. This invisible shield is everywhere. It's under your fingertips right now. It's in the air you breathe, the keyboard you type on, the food you eat. It's why a fly doesn't fall through the air. It's why your feet don't sink through the ground. And it's why, even though atoms are 99.999% empty, you can still build bridges, homes, and cities. You might ask, what would happen if the electron shield didn't exist? Well, without it, atoms would collapse into each other. Matter would compress. There would be no structure, no boundaries, no resistance. You'd fall through the floor. The floor would fall through the earth. Everything would collapse into itself until only a singular point remained. That's not just science fiction. That's what happens in black holes. In black holes, under immense gravity, the normal rules break down. Even the electron shield can't withstand the pull. Atoms get crushed. The space between things disappears. Matter becomes pure density. That S, how powerful this shield is at S. The only thing standing between everyday life and total collapse. So next time you push a door open, or catch a ball, or tap a screen, remember, you're not making contact. You're floating, hovering just above the surface, your electrons pushed back by theirs. It happens at a distance so small, you'd never notice. A space less than a billionth of a meter wide, but that tiny distance holds up the entire physical world. It's easy to take that for granted. We think of barriers as things we can see, walls, windows, armor, but the real barrier, the one that matters most, is one you'll never see. It's the electric whisper between particles, a field of repulsion so consistent, so reliable, that it's become invisible to our minds. It's always there, and it never stops working. So in a way, you live inside a constant field of tension. Everything around you is gently repelling everything else. There's no such thing as true stillness. Every object is in a state of balance between invisible forces. That's what holds your shape together. That's what keeps the world from falling apart. This isn't a flaw. It's not a glitch in the system. It is the system. The electron shield, ISNT, just a fun physics. Fact at S, the reason the universe works the way it does. And the strangest part, we never notice it. It's like air, or time. We use it. We depend on it, but we rarely think about it. Until now. Because once you realize that everything you touch is actually pushing you away, it makes you wonder, What else have we misunderstood? What other forces shape our lives without us ever feeling them? Maybe not everything invisible is imaginary, and maybe the distance between things is more important than we thought. Chapter 4. You're floating barely. Take a deep breath. Now look down at your feet. You are standing, sitting, resting whatever position you're in. You probably feel anchored to something, a floor, a chair, the ground. But here's the truth. You're not on anything. You're floating. Not like a balloon, not like someone in space, but in a very real, very physical sense. Your body is hovering, separated from every surface by a thin, invisible barrier. A gap so small you can't see it, can't feel it, can't measure it without advanced tools. Yet it's always there. It's there when you sit, when you walk, when you press your hands against a wall. You never truly touch anything. You only get close enough for the universe to say, "That's far enough." Let's go back to that feeling of pressing your hand on a table. It feels solid. Your brain says, this is contact. But zoom in way, and what you find is something else. Your atoms and the table's atoms never connect. The electrons in both surfaces repel each other. The closer they get, the stronger the repulsion, until, at some microscopic distance, they balance, they hover. That's where you are right now. Every part of your body that feels like it's touching something isn't. It's floating just above the surface, balanced in place by trillions of repelling forces. And here's the crazy part. That distance, the one that keeps you from sinking into the floor, is unimaginably small. Just a few, that's less than a millionth of a millimeter. But it's enough to keep you suspended, enough to create the illusion of touch, enough to make walking possible, to make sitting comfortable, to give shape and structure to your day. You don't need physical contact to live in a physical world. You just need resistance. Now let's think about pressure. When you press harder on something, you're not closing that final gap. You're increasing the strength of the interaction. Your electrons are getting closer, yes, but they'll never overlap. The repulsion simply grows stronger to match the force you apply. That's why you feel more pressure but still no contact. You can't break through. The forces at play won't let you. It's like trying to walk through wind. The harder you push, the more it pushes back. Except this wind is made of electric fields, and it's constant, invisible, unyielding. This principle is what allows almost every object in your daily life to work. Why can you sit on a chair without falling through? Because the atoms in the chair repel the atoms in your body. Why can a plane fly? Because the air under the wings pushes back with just enough force again. Electromagnetic interaction at play. Even bouncing a basketball is a dance of repulsion. The ball doesn't hit the ground, it gets close. The atoms in the rubber push against the atoms in the court, and the repulsion sends it back up, again and again, over and over, without anything ever touching. We live in a world of floating things, and we don't notice, because it feels real. But once you know this, once you see the space between all things, you begin to realize something deeper. Nothing in nature really wants to connect. Nature resists contact. It avoids collapse. It separates, balances, holds back. It's not because of some design flaw. It's the very structure of existence. This invisible balance protects you from falling into the earth. It stops your body from blending into the chair you're sitting on. It gives you a surface to rest, to walk, to dance. But it also gives you space. And space matters, not just in the physical sense. The idea that everything is held apart, not crushed together, makes life possible. If atoms weren't like this, if repulsion didn't exist, you wouldn't just fall through the floor. You wouldn't exist at all. Your body would collapse into itself. So would everything else. The world needs space. It needs separation. And it needs resistance. You are floating, always, on everything. But don't think of this as cold or mechanical. Think of it as precise, beautiful, unbreakable. You are held in place by the rules of the universe, by silent, invisible shields that surround every particle of you. Not a single atom overlaps another. Not a single electron lets its guard down. You float, barely, but it's enough. And that floating becomes the foundation of everything you know. Now pause for a second. Look around. The floor beneath you, the chair under you, the objects on your desk. They're not touching each other. They're all hovering in perfectly controlled repulsion, all balanced, all stable, all built on space. It's humbling, in a way, to realize that what feels so close is never truly connected, that everything we call solid is held apart by an unseeable force. And yet, life continues. It continues in balance, in motion, in floating tension. It's as if the universe says, I won't let you fall, but I won't let you merge either. You belong apart, but near. So here we are, hovering, existing, together, but never quite touching. And maybe that's exactly how it's meant to be. Chapter 5. Quantum Physics and the Impossibility of Contact. By now, we've peeled back the layers of everyday experience. We've seen that what feels like touch is really a dance of invisible forces. That even when we press, lean, walk, or lie down, we're never truly in contact with the surfaces around us. But what if we go even deeper? What if we dive past atoms, past electrons, and enter the strange, unpredictable world of quantum physics? That's where things start to get blurry. In the classical world, the one we live in, the one where balls bounce and tables feel solid, things are straightforward. Objects have positions, velocities, shapes, boundaries. We know where things are and how they move. But in the quantum world, certainty disappears. The rules change, and the idea of two things touching doesn't just become unlikely, it becomes meaningless. Let's start with something called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This principle says that you can know both the exact position and the exact speed of a particle at the same time. The more precisely you know one, the less precisely you can know the other. So what does that mean? It means that on a quantum level, particles don't have fixed locations. They aren't little marbles sitting neatly in space. They're more like cloud smears of probability. There's a chance a particle might be here, or there, or somewhere else entirely. And if you can't say exactly where something is, how can you say it's touching something else? Touch requires location, a point of contact, a boundary. But quantum physics says particles don't have those things in the way we expect. They're not objects with edges. They're possibilities. This is true for electrons too. Earlier, we talked about electrons repelling each other, keeping our atoms from overlapping. But even those electrons aren't tiny dots flying in circles. They're fuzzy probability fields, waves, not balls. You can't pin them down. You can't draw their outlines. So even if you wanted to imagine two electrons touching, the question breaks down. How do you touch something that doesn't have a precise edge? You don't. You can't. And it gets weirder. Sometimes, particles behave like they exist in multiple places at once. It's called superposition. It's the idea that a particle doesn't pick one place until it's observed or measured. Until then, it's in all the possible places it could be. That's not metaphor. That's been tested, proven, and repeated in labs around the world. So, let's put this together. At the smallest scales, particles don't have precise locations, don't behave like solid objects, can exist in multiple places at once, are described by probabilities, not certainties. Now ask yourself, how do you touch something like that? You don't, because touch implies contact, boundaries, and location, and the quantum world doesn't work that way. Even more, particles can be entangled, linked together across distance, affecting each other instantly, with no physical interaction. That means connection without contact, influence without touching. It's as if the universe found a shortcut, ignoring space entirely. This is the level of reality most people never think about, but it's the one that builds everything we know. Every chair, every tree, every human, all made from particles that don't follow the rules we expect. So, when we say you've never touched anything, we're not just talking about atoms pushing each other away. We're saying that, at the deepest level, the whole concept of touch doesn't exist, not the way we imagine it. In the quantum world, there are no surfaces, no collisions, just fields, interactions, probabilities. Your body is made of them, the floor is made of them, and when they come near each other, they don't press, they don't connect, they interact, through forces, through exchanges of energy, through invisible relationships that never involve real contact. It's a different kind of world, one where language starts to fall apart, where the words we use, solid, touch, near, far, start to lose meaning, because none of them were built to describe quantum behavior. They were built for apples, tables, and rainstorms. But reality is stranger than that. Here is one last idea to consider. Even the particles that make you up are not yours in a permanent way. They change over time. They move in and out. Your body is like a river of particles flowing, shifting, never fixed. And every one of those particles is untouchable. Not metaphorically. You are built from things that cannot be touched. and you are surrounded by things that cannot be touched. And somehow, all those non-touching things build a world that feels warm, sharp, soft, heavy. That's the illusion. A brilliant, reliable, perfectly crafted illusion. So what are you really feeling when you touch something? You're feeling a response and outcome of invisible forces, an effect, not a contact. The quantum world doesn't need contact to create consequences. It only needs interaction, and that changes everything. It means we live in a world where nothing truly connects, and yet everything is deeply connected, where things don't need to collide to communicate, where being close doesn't require being in contact. And maybe, just maybe, that's a better kind of world than we thought. Chapter 6. So what is touch? By now, we've broken down touch on every level: atoms, electrons, quantum particles, and the message has been clear. Physical contact, in the strictest sense, never really happens. But here's the puzzle. If nothing ever touches, why does it feel so real? Why does a cold glass feel cold? Why can you tell the difference between silk and sandpaper? Why does a hug bring comfort, or a sharp edge bring pain? If touch isn't happening at the physical level, then what exactly are we feeling? Let's shift from physics to biology, because while atoms never touch, your body doesn't care about that. Your body isn't measuring electromagnetic fields. It's not thinking in terms of electrons or probabilities. It's doing something much simpler and much smarter. It's interpreting signals. Here's how it works. Your skin is filled with specialized nerve cells called These tiny biological sensors sit just under the surface. When something comes close enough, say, the edge of a desk, those nerve cells pick up the effects of interaction. They don't wait for atoms to touch. They react to pressure, to the force that builds up when two surfaces come close and the electromagnetic fields push back. Different types of nerve endings handle different kinds of sensations. Some detect vibration, some sense pressure, others respond to temperature, texture, or pain. But none of them require physical contact to activate. They just need force. That tiny repulsion between your atoms and whatever you're near, that's enough. The nerves fire. The signals travel up your spinal cord. Your brain processes them, and within a fraction of a second, it delivers a verdict. You're touching something. Except, you're not. You're hovering, suspended, balanced in a microscopic field of resistance. But the signal feels real, because to your brain, it is real. Your nervous system doesn't care about atomic truth. It cares about survival, about interpreting the world fast, clearly, and efficiently. So it builds shortcuts. When you feel a smooth surface, your brain isn't reading atomic structures. It's translating patterns in nerve activity. When you hold someone's hand, your brain isn't tracking quantum probabilities. It's processing heat, pressure, resistance, and assigning meaning to those sensations. And when you stub your toe, well, that pain you feel is still just an interpretation of pressure signals from your nerves, telling your brain that something pushed back harder than expected. Your experience of touch is a simulation, an incredibly well-crafted one. It's not fake, it's not imaginary, but it's not the full story either. It's a best guess, based on millions of years of We evolved to navigate the world by feel, to avoid danger, to find comfort, to tell the difference between soft and sharp, warm and cold, safe and unsafe. And touch was one of our earliest tools. Long before language, long before logic, we reached out literally, make sense of things. That instinct is still with us. That's why we trust touch so deeply. You might doubt what you see. You might question what you hear. But touch, it feels certain, grounded, honest. Even if it's not, because touch doesn't happen out there. In the world, it happens in here, inside your nervous system. It's a message, a perception, a story your brain tells itself to make sense of electric forces pushing back at just the right distance. Let's take it one step further. Have you ever felt your phone vibrate in your pocket when it didn't? Or thought someone brushed against you, but no one was there? That's your brain misinterpreting signals, creating a false sense of touch from internal noise. And yet, for a split second, it feels exactly like the real thing. Touch is powerful, but it's also flexible. It can be fooled. That's how prosthetics work. Modern robotic limbs use sensors to create pressure feedback. The brain learns to interpret these signals as touch, even though the hand isn't flesh and the nerves aren't wired to skin. Still, the brain adapts. It always does, because the truth is, the brain doesn't need physical contact to build a sense of reality. It just needs information. So what is touch? It's not atoms making contact. It's not surfaces merging. It's not even the object in front of you. It's the brain constructing meaning from force and feedback, a virtual sense of connection based on invisible fields. And here's the beautiful part. Even though it's based on repulsion, it still feels like connection. Even though there's always distance, it still brings us closer. That's the paradox of touch. It's not real in a physical sense, but it's real in every way that matters to us. Touch is memory, touch is comfort, touch is how we say, without words, I'm here. So even if we never truly touch anything, we still feel, we still connect. And that might be more real than any atom could ever be. Chapter 7. A stranger reality, where touch doesn't exist. Let's step back. Over the past few chapters, we've stripped away the layers of what we thought we knew. We've learned that atoms never touch, that electrons push each other away, that quantum particles don't even have clear locations, and that what we call touch isn't contact, it's an interpretation, a message created in the brain, a sensation built from invisible resistance, not physical connection. That realization is strange, because it means the world isn't quite what it seems. It feels solid, it feels close, but it's all distance carefully controlled, perfectly balanced distance. Think about it. You've never touched your phone, you've never touched your bed, you've never truly touched another person, not in the way you thought. Everything you've ever touched was just the universe telling your nerves, something's nearby, and your brain filled in the rest. So what kind of world is this? A world where nothing touches, where all matter is held apart by invisible shields, where space and force build the illusion of solidity, where your own body hovers just, barely above everything around it. It sounds cold, lonely, even, but maybe it's not, maybe it's something else. Because in this world, this untouchable world, we still laugh, still cry, still hold hands, still feel, we still experience connection, even if the particles don't. So maybe what we call touch was never about contact to begin with. Maybe it was always about meaning, about sensation, perception, trust. Maybe not touching doesn't mean not connecting. In fact, maybe the space between things is what makes connection possible. Think of music. Notes aren't just sound, there's space between sounds. Think of light. Colors aren't just wavelengths, they're differences in energy. And think of people. Closeness isn't measured in molecules, it's measured in moments. Moments when you feel understood, when you feel held, when someone reaches out not physically, but emotionally, and you know, I'm not alone. So what if the physical world reflects that? What if reality itself is built on space, not just as distance, but as design? Everything, from atoms to galaxies, is held apart, but not to keep things isolated, to keep them in harmony, in balance. Maybe the space is part of the connection. Maybe it is the connection. It's easy to think that the closer we are, the more real it becomes. That to touch something is the highest form of proof, the final evidence that something exists. But now you know better. Now you know. Reality doesn't need contact. It needs interaction. And those two things are not the same. Interaction is subtle, invisible, but it moves everything. It moves planets. It binds atoms. It fires neurons. It builds love. That's the world you live in. A world of invisible forces, of near misses, of space so thin, it feels like contact, but it isn't. And yet, somehow, it still gives you every feeling that matters. The comfort of a hug, the safety of a home, the weight of your own hand resting against your chest. None of it requires true touch. All of it is real, because the brain doesn't need particles to overlap it. Just needs enough force to say, you're here, and that's enough. Enough to make memories, enough to make meaning, enough to build a life. So yes, you've never touched anything, not once. But in another sense, you've touched everything. You've felt this world through waves of resistance and fields of energy, through the careful choreography of forces that surround you at every moment. And somehow, in the middle of all that space, something beautiful happens. You feel connected. If this changed the way you see the world even just a little, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you think touch really is. And if you want more quiet questions like this ones that make you pause, wonder, maybe even smile, consider subscribing. This channel is for people who stay curious, who look a little deeper, who don't mind if the truth feels a bit strange, because the truth is strange, and that's what makes it worth chasing.